Alright, so morning. We have to finish today the structures, and then give you some classes info, and you'll find some homework. Project now. You don't have everything you need about that yet, and you'll have it in the next hour. So, you have questions before I begin? Structures? Alright. So we were talking about structures. And we said we start with like definition. Oh, we call it a structure, right? And there's a couple things I'm going to tell you today that are pertaining to C++ instead of C, but you're going to use that anyways in real life, so might as well give it to you. So, you have let's say this is about an employee, and the employee has pay rate, and of course there's other fields, and let me add the last name, and we're gonna say it's 35 characters, and I'm gonna leave it like that. So this is the employee. So, since employee now is a data type in my main, I can use this employee, right, as just another variable. I can say employee me, and I can say me dot pay rate. I'm gonna put $10 right now. And the last name, I have to use the string copy, right? Need that last name. I mean, you know how to copy strings. But then, I somehow sneak a little piece of code, and I just happens to add a 0. Wouldn't be nice. Let's say what does that code do? Multiplies by 10 whatever is there, right? So now I can make $100 an hour. If I make $100 an hour, I only have to work for an hour a day, right?
Exactly.
And so sometimes you wanna have some security, and you can also, let's say I pissed off somebody, or somebody pissed me off, and I go to the pay rate, and I do this. So instead of automatic deposit, they're getting withdrawals. So the computer knows a double is any number with decimal values. It doesn't know it shouldn't be there shouldn't be any negative in the pay rate. So we can somehow protect that. So in order to protect this, we can make this in the main, put an if statement in the main, and the problem with that is that we don't necessarily have our structures in the same file as the main. You do the includes. We're going to talk about the includes when you include your own. So we want to protect this from happening. At least the negative part. You can give yourself an extra 0 at the end, that's fine. So I briefly talked to you about some tags. I said the difference between a structure and a class is that by default in the structure, whatever's inside is accessible, but when it's a class, everything inside the class is protected, it's invisible. So I'll get a red squiggly line here saying cannot be found, or I'll say cannot access or something. So let's make this a little bit bigger. So I have pay rate, I have last name, and this whole thing was employee. So the computer is going to give you a few suggestions, but the computer doesn't know what you want to do. Because if you say structure, then all that comes available, and then you don't get that red squiggly line anymore. But I want to prevent this from happening. So either field inside, I can make it public or private. So if I put this back to structure, enter back to class, I no longer have access to those things. But let's say I want the pay rate to be protected, and I don't care if you change your last name. I mean, you can, as women get married, they change their last names. So it's not a big deal. But this one, I don't want people to mess with. So the things I don't want people to mess with, I can put this tag on top. Say private. And the things they can access, I'll tag them with public. If I do that, doesn't matter if I use class or structure, they're exactly the same thing. So I say private and column, and anything that's below the private is private, and if I have 200 variables below, under the public, it will be public. So you don't have to do this per line or per variable, it's just do it whatever is below. Remember, the computer reads top to bottom. So now I got the issue is how to set the pay rate since it's private. So I can't see it. Well, so this is not allowed anymore. That part is allowed, but the one I just erased, I can't because it's private. So let me do this real quick. So I have this type employee. All right, just for a second, let's make a function that will, assuming this were public, assuming that were public, I could make a function that, let's change this to public for a second, just for the example, and I'll change it back. So now everybody can see that, right? Okay. So I could make this function called, let's just set pay rate. I can make a function that takes double as a parameter. Call this rate, and the pay rate will be the same as rate. I could also have a function assuming that the pay rate existed. The problem is, I'm gonna get an error right now. It's gonna say pay rate doesn't exist. Oh, was it in the class or the struct over there? Well, it's inside this curly brackets, right? So it can't be used outside the curly brackets. What if I do this? Do you think this will work?
Yep.
Yeah, this will work because this variable are declared inside this set of curly brackets, right? And as long as I use them inside those curly brackets, it could be inside an if statement, it'll be fine. So now I have a class that has this variable being private. That means it's not accessible. But anything after the word public below is accessible. And the main methods inside this class, inside this structure. You can use structure too. Doesn't matter. It works the same way. So now, in here, in my main program, I can do this. It's a pay rate, me, that's it. Pay rate. I want to make $100 an hour. That, if you do need that, because that's a structure or a class, anything inside that structure, when you do that, anything that's public shows up. And because last name is variable, but set pay rate is a method, I can change the pay rate indirectly. Doesn't stop me from doing this. Right? Doesn't stop me. But because now it's inside a function, I can do an if statement here. If the rate is greater than 0, then I set the pay rate. Now, even though it won't give me an error, the value won't get changed because it doesn't meet that, right? Now this will work. So I could do a printf here. And I want to print my pay. And how do I get the pay rate since it's private? I can do me that get pay rate. You following? So, what I did here, this is called that means I protect the access from the outside. And if you want to change the access, you want to change the value, you're forced to use these functions or methods. And these methods they're called mutators or setters. And these ones are called easy.
Do you need, well, the store copy, is that something that needs to be identified, or is that already,
I'm sorry.
String copy.
or string copy, yeah.
You need to include the string in each library.
Mine still says it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cause it's saying that it can't be found.
Oh, because I made the last name public.
Oh, I got it, you're right.
Alright. Is that confusing? Yeah. So, I can have another private, and I'm gonna call that employee ID. Everyone has an employee ID, right? So it's not accessible. I can't do this now. That's not allowed because it's private, right? The employee ID. So what I can do instead, I can make my functions here, right? Let's see if I can make room. And I'm going to put it in one line so it fits on the screen. Now, I can say me that set employee ID 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. So far so good. Now imagine, because this is a variable type now, employee becomes a variable type. It means I can also declare a pointer to that. I'll say new. That's a pointer to an employee, like a pointer to an int. So how big the actual employee is. If you do, you could do something like this. You can try print F size of employee. And I'm gonna use this method called size of. Remember we saw that in the arrays. Employee. It'll tell you whatever size it is in RAM. I don't know what size that is. I assume it'll be, this is 4, this is 8, and this is, so it'll be 8 times 35 plus all that. So it'll be 35 plus 4 is 39 plus 8 is 47. So I might say 47 bytes. That's how big an employee is in memory if you print that. And the more things you add, the bigger it gets. It's irrelevant, the size. But, so now, U, how big U is gonna be? This variable U. Can you tell me how big that is? It's a pointer, right? All pointers are the same size.
32 bits.
Yeah. All pointers are the same size. They're just pointing to an address. It's just the address they're pointing to should be an employee. If it's a pointer to an int, it should be pointing to an address that holds an int, and so on. So, if you have a 64-bit system, then it'll be 64 bits. So you remember what we did in order to allocate memory for that? To create
You're saying
we use a function, right? Remember that function name? Called malloc, right? We did that in the arrays. And it's memory allocate, that's all it does, allocates memory. It says how much memory you want to allocate. Whatever the size of employee is. And then, in order to assign it here, you have to cast it. You have to say this is employee. So, what I'm getting at here, if you declare a variable just like this, you can do the dots. But if you declare a pointer, it doesn't exist in memory, it's just an address to hold an address. You have to you allocate a memory for an employee, and then you can use it. So, what happens is, okay, you're an employee, or I am an employee here. I have a boss, right? And my boss is just happens to be another employee, right? Hopefully. don't get confused with this or stressed about this, but this is an employee. An employee has another employee as boss, usually, unless you're in the top. So I could say I can have an employee just as a type. And this is going to be, I call it supervisor. And I made that public just it's easier. But then it'll be, this one will allocate the same size of this memory, so that gets a little bit wasted, too much wasted memory. So what we do is we'll say this is a pointer. So we don't need to have 2 copies of the employee. So now I can say this. Me that supervisor is you. Does it work?
There's a couple others.
I got red on the, your last.
Malik didn't
Alright. Let's open Visual Studio then and let's put it.
There's that, also after the, where is it? Employee ID, case ID, let's see.
What?
Where's the void at? Oh, right there. Oh, did you take it out? The word employee, or, where is it? The return employee, I don't know. You changed it?
Here?
Yeah, that's it right there. It's saying that it's missing a semicolon right there, in the, like, before the curly bracket, after the parenthesis.
You missing the color bracket?
It says it's missing a semicolon in between those, but,
No.
yeah, I don't know why it's doing that.
Alright, we'll take a look.
Memory, the memory on it, not on. What directory is that in?
Oh, that's in the standard library.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, wait, which one is it?
The mallet.
Yeah, what is?